All right, friends, welcome. This is the Azure AI 900, the AI fundamentals workshop. So it's going to be a workshop to really prepare us for the AI 900 certification for Microsoft's cloud computing service called Azure. So just wanted to say welcome there. Let me mute. Thank you. Just a couple ground rules before we get started. Today is about teamwork makes the dream work. We're going to be working together. We're going to be working in teams and then collectively as a whole team. So just making sure that, we're working together as a team well. Humility is another one, right? I don't know everything. So if you ask me a question that I don't know, I will go and try to find an answer for you, but I do not know everything. Neither does anybody in this class. And so, if you do know something, approaching it with humility versus, all of us are idiots is really, really helpful. There is going to be pieces of strength through struggle. If you guys have never dealt with machine learning, the first portion of this entire workshop is going to be a little bit harder for you, but it will really open up your understanding of A, how predictive modeling or machine learning works, and then B, how AI can sort of be integrated into workshops and just give you a much, much better understanding, which in my opinion, whether you're data science or web development, having an understanding of predictive modeling and taking in data and doing something with it is a really big thing. So if at the beginning this sort of stresses you out or, it sort of seems like a lot, that's okay, right? It's especially if it's your first time, that's very, very okay, but we're going to work together for that. And the last one would just be respect. As somebody else is talking, or if I'm talking, if you have a loud background, just please keep yourself on mute. And then if somebody's talking, not interrupting them and letting them get their entire point out is, just a lot about respect there. Here's our tentative schedule. Now, when I say tentative, sometimes we end a little bit early. So sometimes the morning session really ends about noon. Just sort of depends on how the information is being processed, how the information is being, received from you guys. So if you guys are understanding and you don't have any questions, we might end a little bit earlier. If you do have questions, it might lengthen it out. Not that lengthening out is not a bad thing at all. I would, ask that you ask questions and, we want to have a better understanding. That's the whole point of this workshop. So these are a tentative schedule. One thing I will say is we will likely, and when I say likely, like I've never gone all the way till 5 o'clock. So just so you know, we're not going to go all the way till 5. Usually it's around 3:30, 4 o'clock-ish. Again, totally depends. But it's usually not until 5 o'clock. So if you guys are sort of like, oh man, it's a long day, don't worry, there's plenty of breaks and we won't go all the way till 5. Whole point of this workshop is we're going to learn about AI concepts, AI workloads, and then AI services, particularly for Microsoft Azure, right? And the idea is you're going to learn concepts that are general, whether you're working with AWS, which is Amazon's, or Azure, which is Microsoft's, or GCP, which is Google Cloud. A lot of these things are the same, right? Predictive modeling still has the same pipeline, the same process. Just the things that are going to be different for the certification is you're going to need to know these general ideas, but you also will need to know the specific Azure services, the specific things that Microsoft Azure provides to its customers. So that's going to be part of the certification process, but we will be learning a general understanding of AI and how predictive modeling works. Then after this, you'll be about 85% ready. There's going to be a little bit of self-learning and sort of reinforcement needed, but we are covering a massive part of the certification today. And so after this, again, there might be about 15% of, to get you the 100 to really sit down and reinforce some stuff and maybe learn a couple things. But after that, you can take your certification. And then once you get certified, you can put that on your resume, on a LinkedIn profile, social media. This is a really big thing for LinkedIn right now. Microsoft is really on the up and up for cloud computing, right? They host, or they have the most data centers of any cloud computing network over AWS and GCP. And then even yesterday, I don't know if you guys are aware, keep track of the news, but AWS went down. And so that's sort of a bigger thing, right? Because as if reliability, not that AWS isn't reliable, but there's been a couple of times that AWS has been down in the last 2 months that, somebody might shift over to a Microsoft, or maybe part of their services is called cross cloud, where part of them are if a company is all on AWS, they might take part of their company put it on Azure, right? So that way they have some sort of reliability or some sort of thing that they can say, no matter what, part of our organization, both of them aren't going to be down, sort of thing. And so from a recruiter standpoint, having this certification is a big deal because it shows them that this is something that that you have a knowledge about. And the cloud is something that every company works with the cloud. There's a lot of reasons why. If you guys took the AZ-900, then Melissa, this past week, Melissa went in on sort of what that looked like and why the cloud is so important, this CapEx versus OpEx spending. And if you didn't, I would encourage you to take that one because it gives you just a general understanding of what the cloud is like. But then recruiters really, really desire this stuff. And so to just sort of make your resume pop as well. And here, I will give you this slide deck. It's in the chat now. And on this slide deck is just a resource that shows that there's a desire in the market right now for Azure developers. Cool. So again, we're going to prepare for the AI-900 certification. We're learning what AI is and the core concepts of AI, and we're going to learn the specific things, and this is a key thing, the specific things that Azure offers compared to maybe like an AWS or GCP, right? We're not going to go into a comparison of here's AWS's version, here's Azure, but really just hammering down, this is what Azure can provide, and here's the different services and what, if you were to buy this service, what do you get with that sort of thing. Then, as always, at the end of one of these workshops, whenever it's complete, you will receive a 50% off voucher. It's really an equivalent of $50. You don't have to use it for the AI-900. It can be used for any certification for Azure. And so let's say, right now the AI-900 is $100. You get a $50 savings, so it's 50% off. But let's say you wanted to take a certification that is more than $100, maybe it's $200 or something like that. It would still just be $50. So it's not a 50% off anything. It's just equivalent to $50 savings. And you cannot, unfortunately, use the $50 as like $50 for your cloud portal either. It's just towards certifications. Cool. So yeah, that's what it would look like. We're going to take the exam. And then once we get the exam, we will receive our certification. The certification is good for 2 years. So, you have ample time. The reason is because technology is always advancing. So we want to make sure that you have the most up-to-date information. Tyler, looks like you have a question. Did you raise your hand?
Yeah. How do we get that discount? Like where do we...
I will be sending out an email that has the recording, has the slide deck, has everything we talked about. And then in that, we'll give you I'll give you a coupon code.
Okay. I don't know if I got that for the last one, so I just wanted to be sure. Who could I ask about that for the last one?
Myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. For the AZ-900 last week?
Yeah.
Yeah. I planned on sending that out today.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Cool. Talking a little bit about the exam before we jump into the certification is the exam is going to be about 90 minutes long. There's 50 to 60-ish questions. Typically, we've seen it's about 55. You do have to schedule it in advance because it's proctored, meaning that there is somebody who is going to sit and be watching you. You do have to clear your desk. And so I always encourage people, go take it somewhere that you normally wouldn't. So like a kitchen table or, a couch. I don't know. If you have that ability, unless you have a clean desk, then it doesn't matter because it is proctored. You can't have any notes. You can't Google things. So you do have to sort of know the information, but that's actually what gives it validity, right? When a recruiter looks at this, they know that you actually know this stuff because you couldn't just look up an answer. You couldn't just, Google it and not really understand it. You have to have this knowledge. When it talks about scheduling in advance, you can typically schedule, anywhere from 24 to however much in advance that you want. But you do have to schedule in advance, so it can't be sort of on a whim. Sometimes they have it within 24 hours that there's somebody available, but typically you want to do at least 24 hours. I would say that my encouragement is after this certification, if this is something you want to go to, I would absolutely schedule now, right? Because what it would do is it would give you time to study. So I'd schedule for like maybe 3 weeks, because I think 2 weeks from now is around the holiday time, but maybe 3 weeks from now, because then you have a date on the calendar. And also in my time, that I've seen students, it sort of encourages you to study and actually go get this exam instead of, going to all these workshops and then never getting certified. We don't want to waste your time or our time. So that would be my encouragement for that. A little bit of the format is, and this is what we're going to talk about. We're talking about all of this today, but we're going to talk about intelligence workloads and considerations, fundamental principles of machine learning. This is going to be the main portion of this morning. And in the afternoon, we're going to talk about these three, which is computer vision, NLP, which is natural language processing, and then conversational AI. In my opinion, this is my favorite workshop to teach because I think this stuff is really cool. And I think it's the future, if I'm being super transparent with you. There's a lot of things you can do, and I'll share whenever we get to the natural language processing, a tool that I'm currently trying to build using Azure AI tools because I've learned this, that I'm trying to build this tool with. And I think it's a really, really cool thing that you can build in a way that we can actually help the world. And so using these NLP, these natural language processing, which I think is really cool. But today, this morning, we're going to be focusing on the machine learning portion of this and sort of what that workload and pipeline looks like. We currently at Coding Dojo offer 3 different certifications, the DP-900, the AZ-900, and the AI-900. DP handles how do we handle data in the cloud. That's what we're doing next Wednesday. So if you want to join, I'll be teaching that one as well. This is how we handle data, right? So big data, small data, what's a data lake? What is data ingestion? So if you've not dealt, this says data science, I do think it's an important thing to know, even if you are a web developer, because at the end of the day, anything we're doing, whether you're working for Google or TikTok or Facebook or Twitter, right? Everything's about collecting data. And how do we do that? What do we do with that data after? I think it's just a good thing to know as a developer. But we also have the AZ-900, which is our basic web development. And then this one, the AI-900, which I would say is more of a hybrid of both, right? If you took our data science course, you probably have an understanding of predictive modeling. And if you've taken our web development course, then you would have a better understanding of the cloud, hopefully. These are the other courses that Azure offers currently. So there's the AZ-104, AZ-500. Here's just, again, an idea of we don't offer quite a few of these right now at Coding Dojo. We've just really sort of narrowed our focus on the 3 that we have. But if you did want to use your coupon, maybe you took the data and you didn't really care about getting certified in that, but you want to go, to the next one of the AI, this is really fascinating to you. You can use that coupon and apply the $50 to this, AI engineering associate program or certification if you want it as well. Again, here's sort of the process of what we're going to do. This just comes from the AI-900 sort of platform, which I'll show you here in a bit. And it just shows that this is sort of the game plan and the learning path of just understanding these different things and being able to do this before you get certified, which again, this is the whole point of today. But for my visual learners, this is sort of just a pathway of what we're going to do. Cool. So I do want to just give you an understanding real quick before we jump in of what the Microsoft Learn platform comes from. So this whole workshop and material is curated from this Learn platform and the actual exam itself. And so I'll talk about maybe what a question on the exam looks like in this subject, XYZ, but just to get yourself familiar with it. And I'll give it to you right here. I'll put it in the chat. But this is the Microsoft Learn platform. And this is just a platform where sort of you can go in and expand on some understandings. If you want to understand machine learning, you can do this. There's a great video, which we're actually going to watch, where you can start looking and saying, okay, what does machine learning, what does predictive modeling do, and how does it work, right? And so this is a great tool just to, again, continue to understand and learn a little bit more of the terminology and verbiage used. So like automated machine learning, what is a pipeline? Azure Machine Learning Designer. So these are going to be some of the keywords, and that's where we're going to be getting a lot of our information for today. Somebody asked in the chat, when is the AZ-900 workshop? Last Wednesday was the most recent one, and we haven't planned into the new year, but they occur every single month. So sometime in January. Again, here's our tentative schedule. We've already done the introduction. So I don't know why we always have an hour blocked off for that, but that was our introduction. And I'll ask for some questions if there are any questions. But we are going to do an intro to AI. This is a really fun, just sort of entry piece of AI and some things we can do. We're going to do a group exercise. Azure is really big in responsible AI, and we're going to talk more in depth about that and what that means. We're just going to do a group exercise on how do we do this? How do we handle this? Then we'll have a break. Then we're going to talk about machine learning. This is the one, this machine learning piece is really the heavy information portion for this morning. Again, this might be some of that like, oh, I don't really know. This is sort of makes me feel weird, but that's okay. We're going to work on that and we're going to walk through that. And then we're going to do just probably we do this as a group collectively. I'll pull this up. We have a little exercise to reinforce the ideas of what we just talked about. And then we'll have lunch. And then we'll have an hour for lunch. You guys can go play the new Halo if you want, whatever you want to do. And then we'll come back and then finish up the AI portion. There is also a study guide template here. Let me put this in the chat as well. This is not at all, just like required. This is just a tool that if you are the type that can't just sit and listen, but you want to write down to reinforce, this is just a tool you can use. If I say a keyword like what is AI, what are the key elements AI, what is machine learning, what is anomaly detection, things that you can use, and maybe as you're preparing, going through the Microsoft Learn platform and just really reiterating. We're not going to talk a ton about a lot of this stuff, but just a thing that you can use to sort of reiterate some information and just a way that you can continue to sort of study and learn as well. So again, you don't have to use that, but you are welcome to. Are there any questions before I jump into the intro to AI? Are there any questions on sort of the process, the certification, anything like that?
Yeah, so for the exam, are there just multiple choice question or, and also how many questions we need to pass the exam?
Yeah, so they've just recently changed it. It was a 70%. Now it's a score of 700, which is allocated in a little bit different of a way. It's about 55 questions. There are some questions that are multiple choice, predominantly multiple choice. There are some drag and drop questions as well, which we're going to get into when we talk about our machine learning pipeline. So it's going to say, what is drag the next step, which one, it'll give you a couple options. What's the next step of the machine learning or predictive modeling process? And you would drag and drop that piece. But we can look into sort of what that looks like from a certification standpoint. So let's even getting started. Let's go to the exam because they did just change it. So here's the skills measure that I was talking about. Now let's see. I thought maybe they didn't change this one. So yeah, it looks like it is still. What details? Yeah, so it looks like it's still 70% of this, and there is an official practice test as well, but I'll show you a cheaper practice test to do. So yeah, it's still 70% of this, of the questions. Great question. Any other questions?
And it doesn't have to be taken at home, right? You can go to like a place to take it.
You can go to a place to take it. The one thing I will say is they are pretty stingent. It totally depends on the proctor that you get. They're pretty stingent that you can't, have somebody in the background, because in theory, they could be showing you answers or bringing in how, I don't know, or why anybody would go to such an extent to get a certification. I don't quite know, but some of the proctors can be like, if you're in a coffee shop, they might not really enjoy that and they might get frustrated. So I would find and opt for a private place. Like if you rented a co-working space and you had a cubicle, you could absolutely do that. That would be totally fine. But if you like went to a coffee shop or a McDonald's to work on it, I think that would probably cause an issue.
No, I'm saying like if you look at that exam, it says like schedule in person, like
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Pearson VUE is what you will, that's who's the proctoring company. So they're the ones who are the proctors. So they provide the proctors for it. So you'll schedule with Pearson VUE, and then they will basically give you a list. I'm not going to click on it because it has all my personal information. I've made that mistake before. But they will basically give you a list, and then they will assign you a proctor. Is that what your question is?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So pretty much like it's pretty much online exam. There's no in person. Okay.
No, there used to be, but with COVID, they have not gone back to in person.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That was my.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay. No problem.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions?
And this is with all the exams, right? All the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're all online right now, proctored. They have no option for in person. Yeah. Especially because it's based out of, I mean, the proctor itself is not, but it's based out of Washington, and we're still pretty locked down. You can't do a ton. So cool. Any other questions? Great questions. All right. Well, let's jump into the intro to AI. So we're going to jump into this section, really introduce AI, and then introduce responsibility of AI, and then we'll have our first break. So first, before we even get started, can anybody explain, whether in chat or you can come off mute, what is Azure? I've sort of hinted at it and blatantly said it earlier, but can anybody give me sort of what is Azure?
Is it a cloud platform?
Yeah.
Okay.
Specifically, whose cloud platform?
Microsoft.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's hints right there. Azure is a cloud computing service created by Microsoft for testing, building, deploying, and managing applications and services through Microsoft managed data centers. So there are three big main cloud computing services currently. There's AWS, which is Amazon. There's Azure, and then there is GCP, which is Google Cloud Provider. Right now, I believe market share wise, I believe AWS is the leader of market share, and then a close second behind that is Azure, and then GCP is sort of third. There is a big drive towards Azure and Microsoft because of some of the services they're offering. But the big thing with Azure is that they actually have the most data centers. So if you don't know how cloud computing works, basically it's like somebody has a big warehouse of computers that you can, instead of doing localhost 5,000 or running it on your machine, you put all your information on this one computer, and then it does it, and it's accessible throughout the world. Microsoft has the most of those. So if which comes from with a lot of benefits, right? So reliability standpoint, if they just have a small amount of data centers and one goes down, that could affect a lot of people. But this, from a reliability standpoint, there's data centers everywhere. So if one goes down, everything can shift to another data center. The other thing is, if your company maybe has a customer base not in the country that you're at, by having a data center, let's say all of your people are in the UK, right? They have data centers there, that it's easier for your users to interact with your website because you can host your application there versus just hosting it in the US or hosting it in the US, et cetera, et cetera. And so by having this domination basically of how many data centers they have, they allow themselves to really set themselves up to where they are a global, obviously, organization. Microsoft, that makes sense, but they really are sort of setting the footprint of, utilizing data centers and companies being able to reach wherever they want in any part of the world, whether it's Australia and New Zealand and India and China. They do partner with China. 21 via net is their partnership, to where, because Microsoft can't operate as an entity, so they do partner. So they do have data centers in China as well. So again, having that many data centers is a real big benefit for Microsoft. And then GCP is just sort of there. So what is AI? Well, AI, or artificial intelligence, is something that enables us to build amazing software that can improve healthcare, enable people to overcome physical disadvantages, empower smart infrastructure, create incredible entertainment experiences, and save the planet, right? I think we all are sort of familiar with what AI is, but here's a great video that kind of really shows what this is. Give me a second and I will play it. I'm going to have to, give me 1 second. I'm going to make sure that I am sharing my sound. Up.
Artificial intelligence isn't coming, it's here. It's the defining technology of our time. But it's human ingenuity that makes it so powerful. Jane started losing her vision when she was 12.
California Street.
She uses Seeing AI,
I crept down
the stairs and out the door,
which enables her to read and navigate her world. Microsoft AI is helping farmers adapt to climate change,
We can use technology to help feed the world without wrecking the planet.
enabling wildlife conservation,
The ability to use AI really democratizes science. WildMe uses images from any source to help study endangered species.
and creating new ways for people with hearing loss to communicate.
I want the exact same information that my hearing friends have.
It's more than just imitating intelligence or sounding like a human. Microsoft AI is changing every industry, from healthcare
And now you can see these finite details, the relationship with many structures.
to engineering and telecommunications.
We are using artificial intelligence to change the way we are relating to customers.
AI lets us put people first.
The Microsoft tools really enabled us to breathe digital life into an iconic brand persona.
The product that we make is not a thing in a box.
No.
Microsoft AI empowers others to create experiences and potential. This is just the beginning.
Artificial intelligence, it's just opened up this whole world.
The future we invent is a choice we make.
Okay, so that's just a little bit of a welcome and a warm up to AI and some of the cool things that we can do. So just simply put, AI is the creation of software that imitates human behaviors and capabilities. I don't know if you guys are big news people, but I love to read the news and love to read about new tech. And there was just, talking about imitating behaviors and capabilities last week, a robot came out. I don't know if you guys saw this, and it sort of freaked people out because it's an artificial intelligence being, but it would react and its face reacted like a human would. So if you told it something crazy, it would act surprised, and it had the same facial sort of capabilities that a human has. So AI is a software that is, an ever-growing thing that is imitating human behaviors, but can process at a much faster rate and even make more predictive analytics based off of tons of data versus what we, as humans could actually do. There's some key elements of AI. This is more of a Microsoft specific key element. So this is from their tools. But I mean, it is a general understanding, but this is, for this certification, this is sort of specifics in what Microsoft deems some key elements. One of them is going to be machine learning, anomaly detection, computer vision, natural language processing, and conversational AI. We're going to talk about all of those today, but these are the key elements that Microsoft identifies as key elements of AI. So if we're talking about machine learning, this is sort of the foundation for an AI system. It's the way that we can teach a computer model. So it's also just called a predictive model. How to make predictions and draw conclusions from data, which is awesome. Anomaly detection is the capability to automatically detect errors or unusual activity in the system. You can sort of think of anomaly detection as, I don't know if you guys have ever gotten and it's sort of big now, if you guys have a credit card or a debit card, and you might get a text message that says, hey, did you just purchase something in Mexico? And you're like, no, I'm currently in Washington. right? That is an anomaly detection. There's not some human sitting and watching your bank account and saying, oh, that doesn't make sense. Will lives in Washington. Why would he be in Mexico? But no, there's a model that is detecting any sort of anomalies. And if that is the case, if there is an anomaly, then it can generate an alert saying, oh, that doesn't make sense. Will bought breakfast today in Washington. And then an hour later, he was in Australia buying $500 at Lululemon, right? It doesn't make sense. There is an anomaly. You cannot get from Seattle to Australia within an hour. So therefore that wouldn't work. So that's sort of the idea behind anomaly detection. Computer vision, something that's really, really cool. It's the capability of software to interpret the world through visually through cameras, video, and images. You see, we're going to talk more in depth about all of these, obviously, but you can see just even in this image, it can detect which one is a truck and what is a car, what is a person, what is a traffic light, what is a handbag. So being able to detect these things can be really, really cool. Now it can have its own issues too, which we'll talk about here in a bit, but that's the idea behind computer vision. Natural language processing is the ability for a computer to interpret written or spoken language and respond in kind. You sort of think about this as your Alexas, as your Google, like, hey, Google sort of stuff, your Siris like that. That is using natural language processing. You are saying something, it's processing what you're asking and then generating a response back to you. And then conversational AI is something that I loathe, but it's this idea when you want to go get help from somebody or from a company, they just have bots, right, that respond to you with common frequently asked questions versus somebody literally having a conversation for you. But that's conversational AI, to where I can sit and say, hey, I need help. And it's like, is this about your bill? And it's like, no, my house is on fire. And it's like, oh, here's what I found about fire. And you're like, just let me talk to somebody, right? That's part of this conversational AI, which can have its benefits, but it can also ruin people's days.
I'm sorry, NLP, like I didn't understand that.
Yeah, so natural language processing is this idea of, you know, you have a cell phone, I have an iPhone, right? And I say, hey Siri, what's the weather like today? And it will take in what I say. It'll process the words I use. It'll understand, what am I asking? I'm asking, what is the weather? It will go retrieve the weather, and then it will speak and say, it is currently 45 degrees and rainy in Seattle, Washington, right? And so it's processing the different languages. And Azure, this is a little bit of a, we'll talk about NLP later, but Azure has up to 60 languages you can do this with, which is really cool. And this is the tool I said I was building a tool. This is the tool I'm currently using. I'm using NLP. What I'm building is basically a Zoom application that you can, I showed that I'm doing closed captioning. You can enable a third party. So I want to take in this verbiage and I want to actually use this, because this NLP can actually convert languages. So if I'm speaking English and somebody's first language is Spanish, it can convert and spit out Spanish. So I'm basically making closed captioning in another language, right? To where if somebody's native language is Spanish or Mandarin or, you know, French or German, they can click that. And then as I'm speaking, at the bottom will be German or Spanish or whatever their specific, you know, language of choice or first language is. That's just all it's taking in my words, interpreting what I'm saying, and then I can convert it into another language. I can just, you know, speak something else. I can do whatever, but then it processes and then generates a response. That's what that sort of means. Does it make more sense?
Yeah, so it kind of like Google Translate.
Yeah.
An example. Okay.
And that is an example, or just like having, you know, an Alexa around and you say, Alexa, play Christmas. All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey, right? Which is the worst. Don't do that. But it takes in that request, right? It processes and then does some task. And then usually it generates a response of playing All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey, right? It took in your language, it processed, and it did some sort of task. And that's what NLP, natural language processing, does. And Azure has a ton of things where I can do speech to speech. So same sort of thing, like a Google Translate. I can do text to speech. So I can write something and then it says something out loud. That's really big on TikTok right now, right? To where people will text something and then some random generic voice will say, like, when my dog acts crazy, or, you know, whatever. And all I did was write it, and then reads what I wrote and then says it out loud. So there's a ton of different things with basically any sort of language or communication tools. It's a really cool tool. It's already pre-built, so you just get to use it. Cool. And then we talked about conversational AI. Now, when we're dealing with all of this sounds incredible, right? Like, why would I not want to use this? But when it comes to AI, we have to be very responsible. And this is a huge thing that Microsoft really hounds on, and there will be questions on this because they really want to reiterate, if you're going to use these tools, you have to be responsible. And so our AI is a powerful tool, and it can be really great for enhancing the world, right? It can be great for, like, computer vision. It showed different streets, right? And it showed different tools. That way, this woman who was visually impaired was able to run and read and know when to turn and when to go XYZ. But we have to be responsible on how it's used, because on the same time where we are taking computer vision, it can be something really good. Let's say we're detecting a certain thing, or CCTV, right? Or I heard about I don't know if you guys have ever seen Black Mirror. As you get more into AI, Black Mirror is not like the future, it is reality. But there's this tool that in China they were using to sort of create a social score. And so based off of you and your face, if you were frequently going to a bar, right? It was sort of really contested. If you were going to a bar, let's say 5 or 6 times a week, it would generate an understanding of, this person, has a lower social score because they are frequently drinking, and maybe they're an alcoholic, and et cetera, right? And it can use these same tools to generate a really horrible thing. And so there's really this focus on, let's be responsible with AI. And Microsoft is guided by a set of 6 principles. So these principles are designed to ensure that AI applications actually provide amazing solutions to difficult problems, but it's not using any sort of unintended, negative consequences. Cool. So now we have our first, before I kind of jump into this, are there any questions on this idea, this responsible AI? We're going to learn more about it, and that's what this whole group activity is going to be. But are there any questions so far?
Is a responsible AI same thing as security?
Not quite.
Okay.
The idea behind, no, sorry. Responsible AI is this idea that, it's the old Uncle Ben quote from Spider-Man: with great power comes great responsibility, right? And so maybe that's not his quote. No, what did he say? Anyways, this idea that we can make a tool that is really powerful, really, really great, right? With any tool, it's sort of in the hand of whoever it's in the hand of, it can kind of run that way. What do I mean by that? Let's say, hypothetically, right? Let's say that that Doug here is a dictator, right? He becomes a dictator of some country. Sorry, Doug, I just saw you first. And he decides anybody with glasses has to work overtime 24/7, right? Anybody who's visually impaired or, doesn't get to blank, right? Get to have their own car. They have to only use public transit. Well, let's say he has access to computer vision, right? And computer vision is cameras all over the place. And as that camera can detect people and detect people with glasses, then the cops can know where I'm at, and I go get arrested, and they take my car and give me a bus ticket, right? And say, you can only take public transit, and we now have your name and all your information. That's using these tools that are really powerful, right? Where it can detect, like, there's facial recognition. You think of a cell phone, right? Where it's, you raise it up and now it just recognizes your face. That is a unresponsible, that is a general understanding of that is not an okay thing to use AI to make people with glasses have to take public transit. And that's a really sort of dull idea. I mean, in real application, it'd be like if somebody of a certain race, if somebody was a certain race, because yeah, like, hi Shin, you just took your glasses off and you're like, I'm chilling, right? But like, you can't do that of your race, right? And so let's say we had a dictator who was like, anybody of a certain race can't have their own car, or has to live in a certain area and can't enter this part of the city. That's where this idea of responsible AI comes in. Is, there are the tools that can detect that. They can detect race, they can detect, certain things. But if that falls in the hands of somebody who, really abuses that power, that's unresponsible AI. So that's the difference between security in the sense of like, oh, this is secure, the biometrics, everything like that. And like, how do we actually use this tool for good? Because it is powerful and, it does have the capabilities, if it is in the wrong hands, and CCTV and there's cameras everywhere, to keep people of certain races out of a certain area, or alert the cops when somebody of a certain race enters this block, right? Which would be a horrible, horrible thing. So that's the idea behind responsible AI. We have to be smart with what we utilize it for. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool.
But responsible AI then is not the AI, it's what you do with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Thanks.
The great question in distinction there, Larry. It is, how do we utilize these tools? It's the user who's using that, or the creator of the application has to be very smart with what they do, right? Like even the tool that I'm building that connects that, let's say that I was a horrible human and said that if, it detects some other language other than English, it says, something horrible, or just mutes them automatically, or says, very racist things. It's me. I have to be responsible and take in the data and use the tools in a good way, right? Not something that could be horrible. That makes sense.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Great questions.
Is there a thing called AI testing or anything like that to prevent this from happening?
There is, like, if not AI testing per se, but I mean, there are tools, there are stopgaps, right? To where if I am using Azure as a tool and it gets found out or reported that I'm using it for this really horrible way, Microsoft will like shut down your account, right? And like, they'll cut you off from being able to use their tool. The idea is that if you're building your own AI, then nobody can really shut that down, right? Like, unless there was a, unless it was like a national security issue. But it's just this idea of artificial intelligence. Let's use this for good, not, right? The idea of, using it for good, not for, sort of anything. But I don't know that Microsoft necessarily has tools in place to make sure that you're using it for good or bad. But you can sort of think about responsible AI is this way. Maybe not responsible AI, but Twitter is now working on, bullying or anti-bullying, or computer vision can actually detect porn, right? And so, or, explicit images. And so using these tools to make sure that we are cutting that out. Or Apple was in the news a couple of weeks ago. Sorry, this is just a rant on the responsible AI. Maybe a couple of months ago, to where it came out and it was actually using, there's machine learning models on your phone, right? And it was using those to detect if somebody underage, or if there was photos of people underage and an explicit content. And then it would alert people. It would alert the right amount of people if there was, explicit child images on people's phones. And then on B, and this was a really big one, is if you're on a family plan with Apple, it was using its AI. And let's say you have a family of 4 and you're a parent and you've got 3 kids under the age of 18. If you're on a family plan, if one of the kids on your account actually sends an explicit image, every image was processed through the machine learning model. It would then detect this is an explicit image, and it would tell the parent, this is brand new that Apple will be doing, telling the parent, hey, just so you know, little Johnny just sent an explicit image or received an explicit image on their phone, right? And so we have to be smart with, and it created quite an uproar, because it's like, well, if your kid's sending an explicit image, that's something you should handle, but who's seeing this image is, what happens to that image when it's processed, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of things that when we're talking about responsible AI, we really got to be smart with. So somebody asked, would making an AI that finds and hacks irresponsible AI be a responsible use? That's a great question that I don't know. Maybe one day Facebook won't have to traumatize a bunch of content moderators. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, right? And we're using AI to make sure that we are, and that's even another thing too, right? Is like responsible AI could be, let's say we have AI that's pushing content that is, this is a huge thing recently, right? In our current world from 2020 on, it's like maybe we're pushing content that is more popular. And so we have this model that's like, oh, this is gaining traction, let's push it. That sounds like a great thing, but what if that content is misinformation or horrible information based off of a people group or something like that, right? So we have to be smart with what tools we use to promote our company, to promote information, to promote XYZ. So that's the idea behind responsible AI. We're actually going to do a breakout group. I hope that this has been fun so far and you guys are really interested because I love this stuff. But here's what we're going to do. We have this guy right here. And so what I'm actually going to do is put you guys in groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, there's a perfect amount of time, perfect amount of people. So we're going to put you guys in groups. So there's going to be 2 breakout rooms. And what you'll do is I'm going to give you this document. One person in your group, just as a reiteration, one person in your group is going to make a copy. You guys will not be able to edit this. Because it's locked. Obviously, this is our template, but all you have to do is go here, make a copy, entire presentation. So one person in your group is going to do that. And once they make that copy, just send it out to your group. Make sure the share settings are to where anybody can edit, right? So you just go here, share, and then here you're going to do anyone. You would just change this and you go anyone with this link can edit, right? And so that's what you guys are going to do in your groups. And then each person is going to basically just pick one of these things, whether it's fairness, reliability and safety, privacy and security, inclusiveness, transparency, or accountability. And you're going to take this and you're just going to read about the material. There's going to be a hyperlink in each one of these that talks about transparency or accountability. And then you are going to make a slide that sort of just lays out, well, what is this, right? So you're going to edit and add information about your principle. Some of these principles are going to overlap, right? But you want to include what does the principle mean? And then an example maybe of how it would be used in a real AI situation. And so then we're going to give about 20 minutes. I'm going to give you guys 20 minutes because we're way ahead. So I'm going to give you guys 20 minutes. And then what we'll do is we'll come together and then since there's 2 groups, there's going to be 2 people doing each one. I'll just say, hey, does somebody that did fairness want to share? And they can share their content or share their screen and talk about it. And if somebody has another great example, they can, the other person that did fairness, they can share that too. And if not, that's totally okay. So let me put you guys in. Are there any questions on what you're supposed to do? And all you have to do in order to create a new slide is you just right click and then you can say like duplicate slide. And so then you'll just click this and then change fairness, right? So you'll have the instructions, or you can just do the same slide. You can edit this, totally up to you, however you want to do that. Any questions on what we're doing? Cool. Put you guys in a breakout room. So again, there's going to be 2. So just picking 1 per person. So it should be totally good to go. And then I will bring you guys back. It's 9:55. Let's go ahead and do 10:15 my time. So we'll do 20 minutes. If you guys need a little bit longer, I'll hop into each group and then we can, dictate. If you guys need, 5 or 10 more minutes, we can do that too, because we're way ahead. So, alrighty, friends. Breakout rooms are open.